Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. We're back. We're back. It feels like it's been a minute since it was just the two of us.
It has been, it's been a lot of amazing interviews and not so much us time. So Here we are.
Okay.
I'm moving in.
Awesome. We've been off on retreat together, which was, from my perspective, fantastic.
Yes, me too.
And not easy.
Oh no.
Fantastic, and it fucked some of my shit up.
Many growth opportunities.
Oh, you put that so much nicer than I did. Being on retreat sounds, I think, to my inner self-care guru, that sounds like, oh, that'll be so nice.
It was not a vacation, if that's what you're picturing.
All.
No.
But I have needed to go be in a container somebody else is holding for a minute. And it was lovely. We didn't know whether we'd go together, but we did. I'm back feeling renewed in my work, feeling more called to certain aspects of my work, really leaning into them. Things like getting clear on what it is that I mean when I say relational individuation.
Well, that's a yummy, juicy term.
Right.
I love that one.
So I want to talk about that today. And I know that you had an amazing addition. We were working on some stuff for the year of opening this week. And you started drawing out some diagrams. And I felt like, yeah, okay, we're starting to get somewhere on the complexity that comes up when we talk about, I'm doing my work. And hopefully you're doing your work. And when we talk about work, we're talking about like the inner work. Like, what is it for each of us to be engaged in our personal, psycho-spiritual growth? And then we do that in a relationship here. And then because we're non-monogamous, we do that in multiple other relationships, including our friendships, our family relationships, our close colleagues, the ones that because I have some colleagues who I consider to be very dear to me. And in all of these places, we wind up in the potential area of losing our sense of our own journey, but also in the potential of losing the fact that where we overlap is actually exactly where we learn, where we grow.
Right. And this was, so you were talking about, so there's our relationship, and then there's the people that we interact with in whatever, family, work, people, friends. And last week we spent a week with a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. So there are 60 of us together.
Mm-hmm, and there were a lot of opportunities to relate according to each of your and my individual points of view on this individuation journey.
Right. So let's go back to the beginning and describe individuation again, because I feel like this conversation happens in a cyclical, circumambulatory way, right?
It's a spiral.
It's a spiral.
You come back to what looks like the same spot, but you're a little different than you were.
Exactly.
So it's different.
It's different. And so if you've been listening to us for a while, then you may have already heard the concept individuation, or you may already be a big fan of Jungian psychology and have a good grasp on that, and that's great. But I noticed that when I listen to my fellow depth psychologists, I always gain something by being really present to how they talk about it. So I'm going to challenge you. Would you describe individuation first?
I would describe individuation first. And when you said we're going to define individuation, I saw that coming.
Excellent.
Because it's about time I started saying things in my own words. Individuation for me is the process of becoming more myself, of working my way through all the stuff that I have put on myself as defenses or coping mechanisms, and all the things that other people might have put on me that I accepted. about who they thought I was. And so who I tried to be because it worked, and, trying to fit in and mold myself and trying to get through all of that to who's me?
Yeah.
Who do I want to be? Who am I in this world?
Yeah. I love that way of talking about it. I also really appreciate that you brought in the terms coping mechanisms and defenses, because if we were going to take a quick look at what are some of the easy ways I can tell whether I am actively processing my work, whether I am doing my work, and one of the ways is, am I able to recognize when I'm using a coping mechanism? Am I able to notice when I'm defensive?
The difference between,
the
a
first
coping mechanism or defense and an authentic response.
Yeah, the first steps are in just getting clear that I am having a reaction, I am activated, and simply noticing that. A lot of times when I think about individuation, I go right to describing how, okay, we're going to talk about meeting our shadow aspects and then meeting our contrasexual, contragendered aspects, meeting all of our complexes. And we can get into all those words, but at core, I actually really like to go back to the beginning. I appreciate what you're saying. Go back to the very, very beginning of just starting with noticing that we are inherently multiple. We have this, we are all part of the one, and yet we are all also infinite. And we have these delicious complexities, and all of those nuanced versions of us. They all have different ways of coping, of strategizing, of manipulating, of coercing. So not just how do I defend from you, but how do I coerce you? How do I manipulate you? How do I persuade you? And all of those things, noticing how I'm participating in my life that way, noticing what's going on, that's to me the first step in simply recognizing that I am the action. I actually get to take actions to see myself. So I get to start by witnessing myself and hauling back that stuff I don't actually mean to be putting out there, but just comes up. And you also mentioned all the stuff that we put on because someone else asked us to. And I like to take that a dive deeper. What's a quality that you have that you struggle with because you know that you mostly wear it because it's sort of implied that you should have this quality, you should be this way?
Okay. Let's jump right to masculine presence. Let's go right to the big one.
Okay. In the deep end.
Here I am. I'm in this body. A body which incidentally is in the top 1 percentile of Neanderthal genetics from 23andMe.
You do have a ridiculous
I come across
amount of...
as I got an award from 23andMe for being so much Neanderthal.
Look how much caveman you are.
Look how much caveman I am.
And that's a lot of fur on that body.
Yep,
it's a lot of fur on that body.
The body that I am in presents is easy to map onto a stereotypical masculine Western presence. And so it's really easy to just fall into other people's expectations of how I'm likely to be in this body. So that's...
And we've been wrestling with that together for years because it's not actually much your personality.
And not so much. Not so much. And so there's, on the one hand, there's that my internal perception of the external perception that leads me to behave in these stereotypical masculine ways. And that's one influence that I get from the world around me. And then there's this reactionary one where I love to foil people's expectations about, so I look like this. What can I do to confuse people?
Confound their
expectations? Because What's this gym rat? I know what he's going to do. He's a gym rat.
Right. You spent a long time as a gym rat.
I did.
There you were.
And the thing is, I've known a lot of gym rats, and none of them are gym rats. They're all complex, just like we all are. But we walk around this world filled with lots and lots of people, and we try to simplify things so we can get through the day. And so one of the simplifications is this guy's going to act in a guy TM way. And it is both, I feel both the pressure to not make them uneasy and to meet their expectations, and also to foil them, because that's not generally who I am.
Right. So it's not, my experience of you is that as soon as I watched you doing things that were outside of that, that stereotypical dude, like in particular, tall, dark, strong dude, American.
Yeah, look at these brows. I must
like,
be deep. I must be silent. I must be reserved.
You are none of these things.
Oh
sir.
my God. How do you stop me from talking once I start? Deep. I like how you threw in deep there. You are none of these things. You're like a puddle.
You are incredibly deep. Now.
Yeah.
I used to wonder.
No,
though.
I've been deep the whole time, but there's only been a little bit of water in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, the reason I threw that in there is you had decided sort of like the limits of what you needed to know.
Which, let's go back to public perception. I didn't want to disrupt the people around me with, I didn't want to grow away from them.
So you decided like what was reasonable to know. You knew a whole bunch about these areas, these couple of areas, and then you would just recycle those stories over and over and over again. So when I say jokingly that you aren't deep, what I mean is the you I knew 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, from my perspective was had some deep fissures of knowledge, but mostly just a puddle. Yeah, because that's how you were playing a game. You weren't individuating. You were playing a game.
I was, and the game was fit in.
Right.
The game was
okay. Well, let's fuck that.
Stay in community by looking at the community around me and figuring out how I can be accepted versus being who I am and finding the other people who celebrate that.
Right.
So like you said, let's fuck that shit up.
Right. So that now we're down into the meat of it, which is, we can talk about the terminology and the word individuation till the cows come home, but really it's the actions. What are the actions? What are the actions of an individuating human, of someone who is prioritizing this shedding of what I am not and remembering, literally stitching back on the members, the things I cut off? What are the actions? Because those are great metaphors, the shedding and the taking off the cloaks and all that. But what do we do?
Well, what do we do?
And your set of what do you do has been different from mine. And that's where I think my work is really, like, this is where I think my research and my depth psychological theorizing is thriving, is coming into being. And it's this concept of relational individuation.
Yes. I love relational individuation so much.
So the idea that I will know me both through doing inner work, through reflecting deeply on my interiority, by allowing myself to come into relation with my multiple inner aspects or my parts, depending on how you want to conceptualize your multiplicity, and by not just using you as a mirror. And this is where I think people usually stop. Like we hear a lot about like, oh, you're my sacred mirror, or you are my shadow mirror, all of that.
And that's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Love that. And the actual places where we overlap, the chemical reactions, the new thing, the third thing that could not be unless the two of us interacted, unless the three of us, unless our community interacts, and the places where all of those interact, that actually is a part of me being able to visualize, to notice, to see who I am not, how I want to move in the world, and where if I am not in connection to other, it is so easy to imagine that I am done with my work at some random moment.
Yeah.
You get to some random insight in your interiority, and like boom, there. You can feel done. You can feel a sense of having ascended, transcended, a sense of completion. And some of us, I'm patting your hand here, get to a spot like that and don't recognize that it's simply a plateau, a resting place.
Right.
Right. So when you were in it sounds like from the descriptions I've heard from you, your late 20s, early 30s were kind of they were a plateau. You'd done the things. You'd married the person, bought the house, made your life, traveled some, gotten the job, but you didn't look at the rest of the mountain, the rest of the landscape.
Nope.
And this isn't just about ascending. This isn't just a plateau.
No, it's about traveling. I mean, there may have been valleys, but to get into.
Hell yeah, there are going to be valleys.
There will be, but I was on this plateau, and one of the things about a plateau, particularly if it's surrounded by valleys, is it looks infinite.
Yeah.
You can't I'm there. I'm in the Elysian fields. They go on forever. I can just stay here.
Especially if you're not an edge dweller. And you were not an edge dweller at that point in your life, or at least this is what you have shared with me.
No, I wasn't.
You were not an edge dweller. No. You had been looking for something that was comfortable. You were looking for family. You were looking to be embraced.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I heard you say that just now and realized, yes, you said I was looking for family, something comfortable to be embraced. Family's not comfortable, by the way. There's no inherent feature of family that is comfortable. Like there's no essence of comfort in family any more than there's an essence of comfort in a relationship, unless you make it that way, unless that's your goal.
Right. And so let's define the word comfort here, because you're talking about a sort of comfort that is stasis, that is not focused on growth. Right? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I mean, that is where I was, but I'm speaking more theoretically and generally now that comfort is I had it just a second ago. You said stasis. Maybe it amounts to the same thing, because I was thinking not stasis, but lack of active digging, an active reaching for growth.
Yeah.
I don't think comfort is the opposite of growth, but
no, though you and I often talk about it a little bit that way, right? Like I get nervous about getting too comfortable, because when in my life I have gotten too comfortable, I've been on a plateau and imagined that it was the whole world.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes often my plateaus were like, well, they were just kind of like low little mud puddles. They were just little spots where I might have rested for a moment, and then I woke up, a year and a half, 2 years later. What the heck? What have I been doing?
Mine lasted a lot longer than that, but
but my trauma response is to seek change, right? Like I seek change. I tend to want to do, whereas your reaction has been to want to be. I don't think these are good or bad things.
No, they're just different ways.
Depending on your core wounds, depending on how your family life has gone, depending on how your life is right now and how secure you feel in your life, doing or being might be the move for you. But when I think about that plateau, I think for me, the plateau involved all kinds of running in circles, scrambling.
Okay.
There was plenty of movement.
Because
I was do, but like all the same thing and stuff that I already knew how to do. So I was continually perfecting something that had already been perfected. And leaving the plateau meant, like, in other words, continuing my individuation journey meant continuing to do often, but do something differently. Sometimes not even better. I mean, some of my most profound times of growth and transition have been times when I allowed myself to suck at something. real bad, like real bad.
Well, and now we get into the idea of, okay, my mind just went blank. That's very interesting. So you're talking about how you would take action and start doing things badly. Right. Pattern breaking. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
That
My move is to pattern break.
And if you're on a plateau, that's how you get off. It's a very important technique for getting out of the plateau and into whatever is next or whatever can be next for you. So
relational individuation is a concept that allows us to recognize these deep dives into our interiority, while also simultaneously recognizing that if we, and this is actually a Jung quote directly, I'm going to paraphrase it because the book's way over there. I'm looking over there. Without others, we would not individuate. So there's a missing piece of the puzzle where it is so easy to go into the cave, and on our retreat, that there was a brilliant yogi who noticed that too much prayer, too much interiority is also pushing away the other, and my whole world stopped when they said that.
Yeah.
They're too much interior. There is a too much, and that too much it's anti-relational in the words that we would use. Yep. Anti-relational, and you fell into that by diving into the more than human world for a while. At first,
no,
go ahead.
That's how we say that now. We say the more than human world. And to me, that kind of encompasses the human world.
Mm-hmm. It does, yeah.
But what I was doing was not encompassing the human world. It was actually stepping away from the human world into the other than human world. So that was definitely a backing away.
I will push the sacred other of humanity away, which also means that I no longer have to look in those mirrors.
That's right.
I no longer have to be exposed to how I show up in relationship and what that tells me about my journey, my experience. And there's a deep ability to absolve ourselves from responsibility. I know that when I push away from humanity, it's because I don't want to feel responsible.
I'm surprised I don't push humanity away more even now. I'm always avoiding responsibility.
Not always anymore.
That's not anymore.
It was a habit that you had. But you've been pattern breaking that.
I have.
And you've been pattern breaking that consistently for 3 years. You keep choosing affirmations and words that are like, I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to show up. And then it's hard for you. Like if I chose the word responsibility at this point,
it's kind of
even
redundant.
My children would be like, Mom, that's dumb.
You're not even trying.
You already picked that word for the year. Like when you were born, you're good.
So here we go back to the beginning of the conversation. One of the traditional aspects of masculinity in this world, this Western modern world that we're in, can't speak for the past, is responsibility, taking responsibility for things, accountability, showing up. I suck at that. And
it
I'm
has
working.
Not been your strength.
It has been a massive opportunity for growth for me. And it always makes me feel one more way that I don't fit into that spot. But that's like the point of individuation is finding out that your particular individuality, my particular individuality doesn't have to fit into anything. It just is me. And if I want it to be different, I'd go ahead and pursue those changes.
And then that's again about being more vibrantly yourself.
Yes.
So as to pull the communal energy that is actually yours. Like this is who I want in my world. I've made a lot of friends over the last about a year and a half. And it's because I finally stopped shielding. I've been hiding for the 14 years before that. I had been hiding. Even while I was public speaking all the time, because it's so easy to do that. It's really easy to hide if you tell everybody exactly what you want them to hear, and then you don't actually have to. So stopping the shielding means saying the things that are uncomfortable, saying the things that I don't actually want them to see, And it has automatically drawn people in. And I've also had to take the actions. I've also had to invite people into my circles
Yeah.
and
Yep.
make spaces for people to join me and call and make those dates and set up the phone calls
Make
and
opportunities
make the opportunities
for
and not wait for somebody
yourself
to
and
invite
for the
me.
universe to let things into those spaces.
Right. I'd like to just shift back for a second, though, because you said responsibility, and there's this stereotypical masculine idea of like taking responsibility, which I find to be really interesting because I can't think of anyone who has had the feminine impressed upon them who hasn't struggled like hell with the fact that, yeah, responsible for everything, responsible for keeping the whole world running while not getting credit for it. So there are like two different ways of that responsibility to be existing.
Yep.
I see you breathing.
Well, you see me seeing clearly one aspect. It's not the only aspect, but so here is the patriarchy that we live in, and there's this masculine picture of responsibility, and individual people who fit that mold are they're supposed to be responsible and everything, except are they? Or is it the picture we paint? There are so many aspects of our culture that are presentation based versus
Right.
essence based.
So now we can talk about individuation further, right? And relational individuation is relevant here too. So there's a difference between trying to be the most you version of you possible, as in trying to paint a picture of being that, trying to make sure your image is what you want to have in the world. Right. So depth psychology is entirely, it's a language of images, right? And words are images too. But if you are worried about the image you're presenting, then it's really easy to miss the beingness. And that's where the interiority work comes. That's where the going deeper into yourself, doing self-reflection, doing journaling, sitting on the mat, going for walks and allowing yourself to not be drawn away, to have your attention drawn by anything other than your own beingness, right? All of that, I mean, we could name 1,000 more things you could do. All of those ways can let you drop the image that you imagine you should be and actually imagine, like from the inside, imagine who you are again, so that is the presentation. So it naturally comes up and flows out. And I think relationships carry some of that same burden. We can, and here we are, we're practicing it right now. We can present an image of who we think each of you wants us to be as a unit.
Right.
Here we are.
Yep.
I am currently seeing someone I care about a lot. So there's another piece of me that nobody's seeing right this second, right? Except here I am, right? And you just had a week where you made a few connections that really lit you up. They haven't become anything yet, but there they are. They lit you up and you're figuring out what to do with that. So people can't necessarily see those parts of you, but they can see, right, the overlap of the two of us. And
right.
It's so easy to start imagining the story behind that. So here's Ken and Jolie. And here they are. We just went to the Barbie movie. So if you're on my Instagram, then you've seen we went all out and dressed all up. And Ken was wearing gold sparkly sneakers. And we went with Beach Ken, because if you're going to be married to Ken, why not? Like, let's go in. We went Beach Ken. And I went into full Barbie mode, though I do not have blonde hair. And we can present all of these images. We can present them on Instagram. We can present them here. And we can lean into the image we want others to see, right? So I can lean away from our relational individuation and into what is the image I want to present to our lovely listener. So you're listening to us. What is the image? What are we presenting?
Yeah.
What do you think we are? What do you think the us is?
Now I want people to, like, okay, just write spend 5 minutes writing it down and then send it to us.
And you can hate us. It's totally fine.
They're jerks. That's what I think right now.
I love the fact that I spend so much time on camera these days that then I have to watch myself back. And sometimes I feel really aligned. And sometimes I recognize that I was presenting an image. And it's not about whether an image looks particularly like conventionally pretty or whether I feel like I sounded really smart. It's about the way it feels. Does it ping? Does it resonate? Was I being me in that experience? And I'm just realizing that I never go back and rewatch the videos of both of us. It just rarely comes up that I have to. I have to rewatch videos of myself all the time. And I wonder what I would see. But viewing the image from the outside as if I were watching us. Who is this us? Because underneath the image is how we are impacting each other's psychological growth every second of every day, even when we're not in proximity, because we have committed to being part of each other's relational individuation experience. So the image that we present might be irrelevant. Like that could be completely irrelevant. It could just be out there. And you and I have a completely different, in fact, I can think of several things that our listeners don't know about us yet, because one or the other of us is like, I don't know how to present that in this context.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I want to present that. And yet I present it to you. Here we are co-creating a reality.
And so our listeners have an incomplete picture of each of us individually and of our relationship. And the thing is, so do we.
Right.
Right? I have an incomplete picture of me and of you and of our relationship.
Right.
And that's the individuation work, is continually working to complete those pictures.
Right. And so that actually just reminds me that when we talk about individuation, often the more common term people are familiar with is often shadow work, doing shadow work, right? Because what you were just saying, I don't know all of me. Yeah. So the concept of shadow is just it's a way to talk about the stuff that is in our unconscious, is outside of our awareness. It is part of us, but it's outside of our awareness. And so frequently people talk about shadow work as if it is a thing that once you haul this thing into shadow, like, boom, I got it. I like to talk about the borderlands, where something comes into my peripheral awareness and I start to know that about me, or I start to know that about us. Mm-hmm. And then miraculously I've forgotten again, and I don't see it. I don't know it. And so something can slip into and out of shadow, and that material, whatever it is, that quality of being, let's say, I'm going to take a pretty easy, difficult one, violence, right? Like the concept of, am I a violent individual? Do we have a violent relationship? I would say yes to both of those in a way, because every once in a while I see the edges of coercion, manipulation. I see the edges of violence. And I'm aware of the fact that if I can see the edge of it and then it slips away again, and I'm pretty sure we're not.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's something there.
You just see the tail slithering away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can just see the tail slithering back into the shadow.
And then it's gone.
And now I don't have to own it. I don't have to know it. I don't have to be it. And if I choose to, I can plaster more of it onto you. Whatever remnants of the tail I see, I could plaster onto you or onto society.
Ooh, they're a good scapegoat for all that.
I can culturally project like right out onto like the patriarchy, society, some big idea. But if I want to do this work with you, I have to continue to do my own individuation work, start to know the ontological ground I stand on. Who am I? What is it that I know about the nature of being me? And there are always going to be caves yet unexplored. Mm-hmm. Thank God.
Oh, yeah.
What a boring damn life it would be.
Well, I got them all. Now what?
But I also want to explore you, and I want to explore what happens when our ontological ground, when our islands overlap.
Right.
And I want to do that when other people are in relationship to us too,
Yep.
It's fucking scary.
It is. And there's a whole thing we could get into, but I think we're not going to fit it into this one.
Okay,
But there's a whole thing to talk about.
So we should talk about
that
it soon,
overlap.
though.
Yeah, I would like to.
So we'll bookmark coming back to talking about what happens when other people influence your relational individuation.
Yeah.
Your experience of knowing who you are in relation to this other. Here you are.
Yep.
You are the person I am most likely to think of when I think of who am I in relationship to. You're going to pop to the top first. But you are not all I am in relationship to.
Good grief, no.
No, not even close. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of delicious shadowlands to explore there, but also holes to poke in my idea of who I am and who you are and who we are.
I used to be so terrified of those holes, and I'm less terrified now because now I'm also fascinated.
Well, lace wouldn't be lace without holes.
Lace is beautiful.
Lace is beautiful. And when we think about getting to know our partners, some of us have core wounds that leave us really wanting a sense of knowing the other completely. Because if I know it all, well, let's get real. I can control better what I know. And that has been my profound wound to work over and over and over again. Can I know you so well that I know parts of you that you don't even know? Because then I can manipulate you.
Because I won't even see it happening because I don't know they're there, so I don't feel when they are shifted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck. It's messy stuff.
Yep.
But to tie this all together, the reason I wanted to talk about this is that the concept of relational individuation is not something out there. It's something you're already doing if you are working on having a conscious, negotiated relationship. No matter how many people you are relating to right now, you and I are non-monogamous, but we've gone through periods of practical monogamy when we weren't seeing anyone else. That's not the point. The point is we're all able, if we choose, to use all of our relational contexts as ways to know ourselves better beyond shadow work. Shadow work's great. I don't want to downplay it. We can do more episodes on shadow work, and there's more. There's much more. One of the things I think I would leave everyone with is just being with the idea of what do I not want the world to see about this relationship? It's a place to start.
It's a place
to start. It's not the sum total, but whenever I think about a particular partnership I have, when I think about, I have a friendship right now that there's a wobbly bit, a way that we behave together that I'm not totally comfortable with, and I wouldn't want the world to see it. There's where my work is. And that doesn't mean it's about showing the world that wobbly bit. It's about you feel wobbly when you see it, when you imagine what others would imagine. So
it's about you looking right at it. Exploring it. Right. Not just looking at it. Exploring. Figuring out what it's connected to when it comes up. All those tracking techniques of figuring out how you are put together.
Right. So I think one last thing to mention is the image of an individuation-oriented relationship. Not everyone wants an individuation-oriented relationship. And we've talked about this before. Some people truly long for enmeshment, and it is none of my business. If you want enmeshment, you get to have it.
Do your thing.
You get to do that. Call it out. Name it. Say that that's what you're doing. If you want that level of like a lack of separateness, bordering on codependence, name it. I would encourage you to seek some outside counsel so that you can keep an eye on where it could verge into difficult territory. But if you don't want that, I'm going to say it's still really tempting. I fall into the habits, the desire. We just yesterday,
Yeah.
I leaned into you and I was like, oh my gosh, every cell in my body after all the vulnerable exposure last week, every cell in my body wants to melt into you and mesh completely, throw away non-monogamy, just like
Yeah.
trash my whole world just because I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired. And that desire to merge, that urge to just merge into you and lose myself is compelling.
And I'm still playing around with the idea of, so we talked about the plateaus, and the plateaus happen and they're okay. You just don't want to stay there.
Not
And
forever.
for us, we have this growth oriented relationship. And sometimes, yep, we rest
Right.
in each other's hands
Yep.
for a
Totally.
while.
You can play that game.
And the trick is to not stay there for us. The trick is
That's what
okay,
we've that's what we committed to.
That's what we have committed to each other.
So the image that I like to use, though, if you're going to move away from that enmeshment-oriented relationship into an individuation-oriented relationship, this isn't about becoming two separate paths, never the twain shall meet. Not at all.
Right.
And that's why I like to call out the relationality of it. This is, to my mind, it's about allowing your paths to cross in a way that lets you actually actively support each other's individuation. And this is where it gets tricky. Oftentimes I see where one person is more willing to support, they're more willing to overfunction, to show up more. They've gone further down the path, they've done more of their own work, or they have more capacity right now, they're more well-resourced. And so they are supporting their partner's individuation process and feeling unsupported. And so now they're trying to support their own and support their partners. And that can go on for a period of time. I mean, stuff happens. I've gone through periods where you were upholding my sense of, wow, am I really living this life? Damn, it's so fucking hard. But if it stays that way for more than a few months, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we are no longer in an individuation-oriented relationship where we are mutually supporting each other's growth paths that will be different and will sometimes wind away from each other and need to find their ways back into mutuality and connection. And we may have gotten over into the territory where now one of us is, over-functioning, martyring to the other. That's not relational individuation. That is the martyr archetype showing up big time. And a lot of us were shown that, we were presented it. I watched my parents martyr themselves to each other over and over again, but I've also watched hundreds of clients take a dip into the waters of martyrdom, of over-functioning. Whichever word feels best for you, try it on.
Also your partner.
Oh.
I've spent my time martyring, and my personal experience of it 100% aligns with what you're talking about. While I'm doing that, it is a way of avoiding my individuation work.
Right.
And then blaming you for it.
Right. Yeah,
So,
especially if it goes on for years.
Yeah.
We were lucky to have a great analyst who looked you right in the eye and said, knock it off.
Yep.
Let her do her work.
Yep.
Leave her alone. Literally, I remember him saying to you, when you came out of session and said, he told me I should leave you alone. and in that moment, he was right. You were just like crawled up my ass with all your stuff, saying you were supporting me, saying how much I needed you. I was going through grief and mourning and school and sickness. I was sick for like 18 months straight. It was brutal. And when Thayer said, knock it off. The second you withdrew that over-functioning, it was literally like that day.
Yeah.
I experienced a shift in my own being. All of a sudden, there was room for me to start taking the baby steps into my own work again. Just baby steps. Little stuff like saying, I need a nap now, instead of you saying, you look tired. And that's not to say it's always that way. There were other times when it was absolutely appropriate for you to say, hey, human I'm in a relationship with, you need a nap, I think.
But what you're describing is luckily the tail end of a pattern that had been going on for a while,
Yeah, just like
And
8 or 9 years
Yeah,
at that point.
just a little bit. And so, pattern breaking
So we broke it. So we broke the pattern. And
with someone else's help, and that is so important.
right. I mean,
No?
that is tons of what I
Yeah.
do in my work, in groups, in individual work, whether I'm doing individuation work with someone or whether we're doing opening work, or both. Pattern breaking is the only way.
Yeah.
It's the only way. It's a required component of making the change that you want.
This is going to sound stupid and obvious, but one of the reasons that relational individuation is so important to me is because individuation, great work. I believe in it. I would like us all to be more of who we are. And the reason we need other people to do that is because we can't see what we can't see.
Yeah.
But other people can sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes all you need is for somebody to see like the flicker.
Yep.
Just the flicker
Yep.
of something, or that tail slipping into the darkness. You just need someone to help you bear witness to your own stuff.
It's an adventure on the level of The Lord of the Rings,
Hell yeah.
right?
Yeah. Or
Pick one.
any
Yep.
particular, both a hero's journey and a tending journey,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. This was
Yes.
This was a nice deep dive. I'm
It
glad to
was.
be back with you.
Me
And
too.
there is, if you're listening to this right now, Costa Rica, the nature of relating, is coming up soon. We are co-hosting a retreat with Megan Bhatia of Amory Podcast. And that retreat is filling up right now. It's happening November 9th to 14th in 2023. If you're interested in joining us, quick, reach out. You can go to joliehamilton.com/retreat and learn some more details or catch our next community call about it. But also you can hit reply to any email that you get from me. If you're not on my mailing list, why not? I love my emails. I love my email list. Let's hear from you, because the nature of relating is going to be about exactly the stuff we're talking about and so much more. So much more. So we'd love to see you in Costa Rica. If that's in the cards for you, join us. It'll be a blast.
Looking forward to it.
There's no one right way to design your relationship. And lots of people, actually about 25%, according to a recent national survey, are interested in some type of open relationship. But how do you know if you are ready to open up happily? Not everyone is, and that's no problem. I've got a 60-second quiz that will give you the answer. And even better, you'll walk away with your next step, whether you're good to go or not so much when it comes to opening up. And this is no BuzzFeed nonsense. I personally designed this quiz from my years of academic research. Go to joliequiz.com. That's JOLIQUIZ.com, and find out if you're ready to open up happily and what to do if you are or if you're not.